At 95, Clint Eastwood finally speaks up about Robert Redford, a name that, like his own, carries a weight of cinematic history. For decades, audiences have admired these two Hollywood legends as symbols of an era defined by grit, charm, and unforgettable performances. Yet, while their careers often ran parallel, Clint rarely shared personal reflections about his contemporaries. Now, as he looks back on his remarkable life, he acknowledges the respect, rivalry, and quiet bond that shaped his view of Robert Redford. This moment of reflection doesn't just reveal Clint's feelings toward another icon, it captures the essence of his own legacy. Eastwood has lived nearly a century in the spotlight, carving out a career that spans acting, directing, producing, and shaping entire genres of film. His journey is more than a Hollywood story. It is the portrait of a man whose resilience, vision, and individuality forever altered cinema. Clint Eastwood was born Clinton Eastwood, Jr. on May 31, 1930, in San Francisco, California. His childhood unfolded during the harsh realities of the Great Depression, a time when millions of families struggled for stability. The Eastwoods were no exception. In search of work, his family moved frequently, living a life of constant adjustment and uncertainty before finally settling in Piedmont, California. These early years instilled in Clint both resilience and independence, qualities that would later define his characters on screen. Physically, he stood out even as a young man, tall, lean, and ruggedly handsome, with a quiet confidence that set him apart. Yet Hollywood stardom wasn't on the horizon during his adolescence. Instead, Clint worked a series of modest jobs to support himself, including lifeguard duty, forest firefighting, and even steelwork. These experiences toughened him, teaching discipline and endurance while grounding him in the everyday struggles of ordinary people. Unlike many who dreamed of fame from a young age, Clint stumbled into acting almost by accident. His early years were about survival, not ambition. Still, the charisma and natural presence he carried began opening doors slowly. Friends encouraged him to try out for small acting opportunities, and despite limited experience, his striking looks and magnetic aura made people take notice. His entry into Hollywood wasn't immediate, nor was it effortless, but it planted the seeds for a future that would unfold with persistence and determination. Clint's early struggles became the foundation of his authenticity. When he played ordinary men facing extraordinary choices on screen, audiences believed him because he had lived his own version of those battles. Clint's entry into the acting world was far from glamorous. In the 1950s, Hollywood was saturated with hopeful young talents, and opportunities for newcomers were limited. Eastwood's first roles were small, often uncredited appearances that required patience and resilience. He endured countless auditions, rejections, and minor parts that barely hinted at the star he would become. Yet, what set Clint apart was his persistence. During these early years, he honed his craft, learning from the few chances he was given. He developed a screen presence marked not by excessive dialogue, but by quiet intensity, something directors began to notice. His rugged good looks and calm demeanor made him stand out, even when the roles themselves were forgettable. Slowly, his reputation grew as someone reliable, capable of carrying more substantial parts if given the chance. The 1950s were a testing ground, a period that would have discouraged many others. For Clint, it was the beginning of a climb up a steep Hollywood ladder. Every rejection taught him resilience. Every minor role sharpened his instincts. By the end of the decade, he had positioned himself as a young actor ready for a breakthrough. And that opportunity came when he was cast in a role that would finally introduce his unique style to the wider world. Clint's breakthrough arrived in 1959 when he was cast as Rowdy Yates in the hit television Western Rawhide. For 6 years, from 1959 to 1965, audiences watched him portray a tough but earnest cattle driver, a role that highlighted his stoic demeanor and commanding presence. Rawhide gave Clint his first consistent exposure, turning him into a recognizable face in American households. More importantly, it introduced him to the Western genre, a world he would later redefine. Although Rawhide established him as a star on television, Clint was restless. He wanted more than to play a supporting cowboy in a long-running series. The real turning point came when Italian director Sergio Leone invited him to star in a trilogy of films that would become legendary. Traveling to Italy, Clint took a risk, leaving behind American television comfort to embrace an untested vision of the Western. That gamble changed everything. From 1964 to 1966, Clint starred as the Man with No Name in Leone's Dollars trilogy, A Fistful of Dollars, 1964, For a Few Dollars More, 1965, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, 1966. With minimal dialogue, sharp glances, and a morally ambiguous edge, Clint created a new kind of Western hero, mysterious, dangerous, and utterly magnetic. These films exploded in popularity, not just in Europe, but around the world. They cemented Clint Eastwood as an international star and redefined the Western genre for a modern era. Gone were the polished, heroic cowboys of old Hollywood. In their place stood a new archetype, gritty, flawed, and more human. Clint's rise was no longer gradual, it was meteoric. After conquering the spaghetti Western, Clint returned to America in the 1970s with momentum on his side. While many actors struggled to escape typecasting, Clint embraced the chance to reinvent himself yet again. His defining role of the decade came in Dirty Harry, 1971, where he portrayed Inspector Harry Callahan, a tough San Francisco cop unafraid to bend the rules in pursuit of justice. Dirty Harry was more than just a film, it was a cultural phenomenon. Released during a period of social unrest and rising crime rates, Harry Callahan represented a raw, uncompromising figure who resonated deeply with audiences. His most famous line, "Do you feel lucky, punk?" became one of the most quoted in film history. The character sparked debates about law, justice, and vigilantism, but whether people agreed with his methods or not, they could not ignore his impact. The role solidified Clint as more than a Western star. He was now an icon of American cinema. Harry Callahan returned in multiple sequels, each reinforcing Clint's image as the embodiment of tough masculinity. Yet Clint's career wasn't defined by just one role. He continued to expand into diverse projects, action, drama, even comedy, always bringing his signature mix of intensity and restraint. He balanced commercial success with risk-taking, proving he was more than a typecast actor. During this period, audiences also began to notice Clint's deeper ambitions. His choices revealed a man interested not only in performing, but in shaping the stories themselves. By the mid-1970s, Clint Eastwood was no longer just a leading man. He was on the path to becoming a filmmaker whose influence would stretch far beyond the screen. Clint's ambition to control his creative destiny led him to found his own production company, Malpaso Productions. This step allowed him the freedom to choose projects aligned with his vision, rather than being confined by studio demands. His first directorial effort came with Play Misty for Me, 1971, a psychological thriller that showcased his ability to build suspense and explore complex characters. This was the beginning of a parallel career that would eventually rival his acting. Behind the camera, Clint displayed a style that was minimalist yet powerful. He avoided unnecessary spectacle, focusing instead on emotional depth and storytelling. His direction revealed a sensitivity to human struggles, a recurring theme that would appear in many of his later works. Through the 1980s and 1990s, Clint alternated between acting and directing, sometimes doing both in the same project. His versatility allowed him to navigate Hollywood in a way few others could. He wasn't dependent solely on his on-screen persona. He was shaping the very films that audiences admired. This creative control also gave him the freedom to take risks, experimenting with genres and themes that others might shy away from. For Clint, filmmaking was more than a career. It was a means of exploring morality. A decade later, he repeated this achievement with $1 Million Baby, 2004, a deeply emotional drama about determination, loss, and the human spirit. Once again, Clint took home Oscars for both Best Director and Best Picture, proving that his artistry transcended genres. Other directorial triumphs included Mystic River, 2003, a dark, haunting exploration of trauma, Letters from Iwo Jima, 2006, which told a World War II story from the Japanese perspective, American Sniper, 2014, a gripping modern war drama, and Sully, 2016, the story of hero pilot Chesley Sullenberger. His directing style, marked by efficiency, restraint, and a focus on character rather than spectacle, earned him global admiration. Unlike many filmmakers who chase trends, Clint stayed true to his vision. Critics and audiences alike praised his ability to create powerful, enduring films with simplicity and emotional honesty. By this stage, Clint Eastwood was no longer just a Hollywood star. He was a storyteller of extraordinary range, capable of shaping narratives that touched audiences worldwide. His name was associated not just with iconic characters, but with films that carried lasting cultural significance. Even into his later years, Clint showed no signs of slowing down. While many of his contemporaries retired, he continued acting and directing, proving his relevance across generations. His ability to adapt without losing his core identity made him unique. Audiences respected not only his talent, but his endurance, the rare ability to remain significant in an ever-changing industry. At 95, Clint Eastwood is more than an actor or director. He is a symbol of perseverance, a figure who embodies the very essence of Hollywood's golden resilience. His reflections on Robert Redford highlight not competition, but admiration, an acknowledgement of shared journeys and parallel legacies. Outside of his professional achievements, Clint's personal life has been as complex as his characters. Known for his individuality and independence, he has charted his own course in relationships and family life, often avoiding convention. This complexity has fueled public curiosity, but also reinforced his image as a man who refuses to be easily defined. His legacy, however, rests firmly on his contributions to cinema. Clint Eastwood transformed the Western genre, redefined the action hero, and proved himself one of the greatest filmmakers of his generation. His influence extends beyond Hollywood. His films are studied in film schools, debated in cultural discussions, and cherished by audiences across the world. When Clint speaks of Robert Redford, it is not simply about another actor. It is about two men who stood as pillars of an era, shaping film and culture in ways that continue to resonate. For Clint, looking back at 95 is not about nostalgia. It is about recognizing the enduring bonds, rivalries, and mutual respect that defined his journey. In the end, Clint Eastwood's story is not just about one man's rise to stardom. It is about persistence, vision, and the lasting power of cinema to define generations. His voice, even now, carries the same authority it always did, measured, resolute, and unforgettable. Clint Eastwood's career was never lived in isolation. He emerged during an era when Hollywood was bursting with talent, actors like Paul Newman, Steve McQueen, and of course Robert Redford. Each of them carried their own style and identity, yet together they defined a golden period of American cinema. While Clint became the face of grit and minimalism, Redford represented charisma and sophistication. The two rarely worked side by side, yet their careers often paralleled each other's, and their names were inevitably linked in discussions about Hollywood legends. Eastwood, in his reflections, often admired how Redford transitioned from being a celebrated actor to becoming a respected director with films like Ordinary People, 1980, which won the Academy Award for Best Director. Clint recognized in Redford a kindred spirit, another performer who refused to be boxed into a single category. Though the media sometimes framed them as rivals, in truth, there was mutual respect. They both carved out unique lanes, redefining what it meant to be a Hollywood leading man, while also leaving behind legacies as filmmakers. Their relationship wasn't built on competition, but on acknowledgement of each other's craft and endurance. Clint's late-life comments about Redford finally put words to a quiet admiration that had existed for decades. Beyond box office numbers and awards, Clint Eastwood's influence is deeply embedded in American culture. His characters became archetypes: the mysterious drifter of the spaghetti western, the relentless cop of Dirty Harry, the weathered gunslinger of Unforgiven. Each persona reflected and shaped public attitudes during the times they were released. In the 1960s, his Man with No Name reflected a world weary of simple moral answers, craving complexity. In the 1970s, Dirty Harry embodied both the frustrations and the controversies of a society grappling with crime and authority. By the 1990s and 2000s, films like Unforgiven and $1 Million Baby spoke to deeper questions of morality, justice, and redemption, echoing broader cultural conversations. Filmmakers, too, have cited Clint as an influence. His efficiency on set, his focus on story rather than spectacle, and his ability to bring honesty to every frame have inspired generations of directors. Actors admire him not only for his performances, but for the control he maintained over his career. Clint Eastwood's name is more than a brand. It is shorthand for a style of cinema that values grit, restraint, and authenticity. That cultural imprint ensures his work will endure far beyond his lifetime. As Clint Eastwood reflects at 95, his words about Robert Redford feel symbolic, two icons acknowledging one another at the twilight of their journeys. It is a reminder that Hollywood is not just about roles and awards, but about shared history, respect, and legacy. In Redford, Clint sees a mirror, another man who took risks, who refused to be confined by expectations, and who used cinema as a tool for both storytelling and truth. Clint's reflections also serve as a message to future generations. Longevity in Hollywood isn't about chasing trends. It is about authenticity, persistence, and the courage to evolve. He has shown that an artist can span decades, constantly redefining himself, yet always remaining true to his core identity. Looking back, Clint Eastwood is not simply an actor who became a director. He is a man who embodied the struggles and triumphs of American cinema itself. His life is a testament to resilience, creativity, and the power of storytelling. And as he finally opens up about Robert Redford, audiences are reminded that even legends look at one another with admiration, humility, and gratitude. At 95, Clint Eastwood's voice carries the wisdom of a lifetime, a voice that continues to inspire, challenge, and captivate.